My fiancée lied about her debt while I paid for our apartment, so I ended the engagement and left her scrambling to start over. I'm a 28-year-old guy who always believed that if you could provide stability, real, grounded, financial stability, then everything else in a relationship would fall into place. Maybe it came from watching my own parents struggle, or maybe it was the way I promised myself I'd never let someone I loved feel unsafe. Either way, when I met Claire, I walked into the relationship already prepared to be the anchor. And at first, she made it so easy to believe that was exactly what she wanted. I remember one of our early dates, sitting across from her in this cozy cafe where the air smelled like burnt caramel and fresh pastries. She laughed softly and said, "One thing about me? I've kept a clean financial slate. No debts, no baggage. I'm ready for a real future." I didn't realize it then, but that sentence would echo in my head for months. At the time, though, it sounded like a green flag. So when she told me she wanted to focus on career growth, I didn't hesitate to take over the bills, rent, groceries, utilities, even starting a small savings cushion for us. It felt good. It felt like I was doing the right thing. Every time I transferred money or covered an expense, I told myself, this is what real men do. This is what love looks like. My friends would tease me, half-jokingly saying, "Bro, you're basically sponsoring a startup named Claire." My family hinted that maybe I was taking on too much, too soon. But I brushed it off, telling them they didn't understand. Claire wasn't using me. She was building something, and I wanted to be part of it. Still, every time I tried to talk about budgets or long-term plans, Claire's body would tense. Her jaw tightened. Her tone shifted sharp. "Why are you suddenly interrogating me?" she'd snap. And even though I'd back off, a tiny knot formed in my stomach each time. I ended this part of our story feeling proud, but undeniably uneasy, sensing a truth she wasn't ready to share. This is where things started feeling strange. Not dramatic, not explosive, just off in a way I couldn't fully articulate at the time. It began with little moments, like Claire tensing up whenever the mail arrived. I'd hear the mailbox rattle, and before I could even get up, she'd practically sprint to the door. "I've got it," she'd say, voice tight, clutching envelopes to her chest as if they contained state secrets. At first, I chalked it up to privacy. Everyone has things they don't want laying around. But then her phone became another thing. Unknown numbers would call, and she'd silence them instantly, face pale for half a second before she forced a smile and said, "Spam callers. They're getting ridiculous. Except spam callers don't leave urgent-sounding voicemails. And they definitely don't call back-to-back." One night, while we were cooking, her phone lit up with a number labeled restricted. She froze. Not a normal freeze, a full-body stillness like her nervous system went offline. "Who's calling this late?" I asked casually. "No one," she snapped, grabbing the phone so quickly she almost dropped it. "Just work stuff. And I don't want to talk about it." Her tone hit me harder than her words. Meanwhile, the money requests increased. Not huge amounts. $40 here for work shoes, $60 there for transport to a work event, a couple hundred for certifications she had to renew. I didn't mind helping, but every time I offered to transfer money directly or help her organize expenses, she'd stiffen. "Why don't you trust me?" she whispered once, eyes watering just enough to make me feel guilty. I started noticing how drained she looked when she thought I wasn't paying attention, how she double-checked locks, how she avoided calls even in the shower, rushing out dripping wet just to silence her phone. I kept telling myself I was overthinking, that supporting her through stress was part of being a good partner. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Something wasn't adding up, and I could sense the cracks widening, even if I didn't yet know what was breaking. The shift from something feels off to something is definitely wrong happened slowly, almost quietly. It started with Claire coming home one afternoon looking shaken. "My car insurance messed up my renewal," she said, dropping her bag on the floor. "I forgot the payment was due. Can you cover it? I swear I'll pay you back next paycheck." Her voice trembled just enough to make me step in without thinking. It was nearly $500. Not pocket change, but I told myself relationships were about supporting each other. I paid it, kissed her forehead, and told her not to stress. The only thing that stuck in my mind was how fast she changed the subject afterward. Almost relieved the discussion was over before it even began. Weeks passed. They've forgotten. Expenses started stacking up, small at first. A utilities bill she said she was supposed to handle. A mandatory online course she said she couldn't afford yet. A surprise fee from her workplace she swore she didn't see coming. Just this once, she'd promise. Next month will be different. Except next month never was different. Every time I gently brought up budgeting, something in her snapped. "Why are you acting like I'm irresponsible?" she'd say, crossing her arms. "I told you it's temporary. Why can't you just be patient?" Her tone always made me feel like I was the problem, like I was being ungrateful or controlling when all I wanted was clarity. And any time I tried to follow up on the money she promised to pay back, she'd respond with a nervous laugh. "Ugh, I totally forgot. Work's been insane. I'll handle it soon, okay?" But soon never came. Friends started noticing the stress lines forming under my eyes. "Dude," my best friend said one evening, "she's not carrying anything. You're doing everything." I brushed him off, as usual. "She's just overwhelmed. It's temporary." But deep down, I felt something tightening in my chest, a constant pressure I couldn't shake. Like I was carrying the weight of two lives while hers somehow stayed feather-light. And even though I kept pushing through, part of me knew a breaking point was coming. I just didn't know when. The breaking point didn't come from some dramatic confrontation. It came from a simple, innocent conversation about planning our future. One night, we were sitting on the couch, the soft hum of the TV filling the background while Claire scrolled through her phone. I took a deep breath and said, "Hey, since we're talking about getting married soon, maybe we should put together a real budget. Something long-term. Something we both contribute to." The change in her was instant. Her shoulders went stiff, her eyes narrowed, and she slowly lowered her phone like she was preparing for battle. "Why are you bringing this up now?" she asked, her voice already sharper than it should have been. I tried to keep my tone calm. "Because it matters. We're building a life together. I don't want surprises down the line." Claire shot to her feet. "So what? You think I'm hiding something? You think I'm irresponsible?" Her sudden anger hit me like a slap. I blinked, confused. "No, Claire, that's not what I'm saying. I just want us to be on the same page." She grabbed her coat, hands shaking, not with fear, but with fury. "I can't do this," she hissed. "You're acting like some accountant grilling me. I thought you trusted me." Before I could respond, she stormed out of the apartment, the door slamming so hard a picture frame rattled off the wall. I stood there alone, the air thick and uneasy. The apartment felt colder without her in it. I remember pacing, replaying every word in my head, wondering how a simple budgeting talk had spiraled into a meltdown. She came back 2 hours later, eyes red, makeup smudged. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "My past is complicated. You don't understand." But she wouldn't say anything more, no explanation, no details. As she curled up beside me on the couch, clinging to my arm, I felt this strange mix of relief and dread, like holding someone close while knowing they were drifting away into shadows they refused to show me. And for the first time, I wondered if I was loving someone who wasn't being honest about who they really were, or what they were running from. The moment everything shifted, the moment the uneasy feeling in my gut finally made sense, happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was working from home, half asleep over a spreadsheet, when there was a loud knock at the door. Not a friendly knock. A firm, rhythmic pounding that instantly put my nerves on edge. I opened it expecting a package. Instead, a man in a worn black jacket stood there, holding a clipboard. "Is Claire Thompson here?" he asked, eyes scanning past me into the apartment. My stomach tightened. "She's not home. Can I help you?" He glanced down at his papers. "I'm here about a delinquent account. We've tried calling. This is our final attempt before escalation." His tone was businesslike, cold, practiced. He wasn't lying. He wasn't confused. He knew her name, her address, her history. My mouth went dry. "What delinquent account?" He raised a brow. "A balance of $12,784. Credit card collections. She's aware of it." The number echoed in my head. 12,000. Almost 13. I felt a cold, sinking weight settle in my chest. "There must be a mistake," I said weakly. She told me she had no debt. He gave a tired, almost sympathetic shrug. "People say a lot of things. Tell her to call us back. Sooner rather than later." Then he walked away, leaving me standing there with the truth slapping me across the face. Claire came home an hour later, humming, acting like everything was normal. "Someone came by for you," I said quietly. Her smile froze. "Who?" "A debt collector." She went pale, so fast it was like watching blood drain from her body. That, that wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. What debt, Claire? I asked. My voice wasn't angry, just hollow. She swallowed hard, eyes darting away. It's old. It's not as bad as it sounds. I messed up, okay? But I'm handling it. Handling it. If she was handling it, why did a stranger just threaten escalation at our door? I stared at her, heart pounding, realizing this wasn't a missed payment or a small mistake. This was the first real crack, and I knew something much bigger was hiding beneath it. After the debt collector incident, I expected some honesty, maybe even accountability, but what I got instead was something far more confusing. That night, Claire transformed completely. She cooked my favorite dinner, lit candles, played soft music. It felt staged, almost theatrical. She kept touching my arm, laughing a little too loudly, leaning into me like she was trying to rewrite the entire afternoon through affection. At one point, she slipped her arms around my neck and whispered, I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only person who's ever made me feel safe. The words should have warmed me. Instead, they felt like they were meant to smother the questions forming in my head. When I gently brought up the debt again, her expression changed instantly. Why are you pressuring me? She said, stepping back. I'm not pressuring you. I just need the truth, Claire. Her eyes filled with tears the moment I held firm. So you are choosing money over love. I knew it. I knew this would happen. It was like emotional whiplash, going from seduction to victimhood in seconds. I tried to stay calm. I'm not choosing anything. I just want honesty. She sank onto the couch, covering her face dramatically. My mental health can't handle this, she whispered. You're stressing me out. You're making everything harder. Some part of me broke then. I sat next to her, unsure if comforting her was the right thing or just feeding into something manipulative. The apartment felt suffocating, warm lights, soft music, but a tension so thick it clawed at my lungs. Over the next few days, the pattern repeated. She'd cling to me, praise me, smother me with affection, right until I asked another financial question. Then she'd cry or snap or insist I was attacking her. At one point she even said, if you really loved me, you'd stop digging. You'd trust that I'm fixing things. But she wasn't fixing anything. She was dodging, deflecting, and drowning me in guilt. And with every manipulated apology, every strategically timed tear, I felt myself slipping further into a role I didn't want. The provider, the protector, and now, the fool who was starting to see the truth too late. Something deeper, something uglier, was hiding beneath all this, and I could feel it getting closer. The moment everything shattered didn't come with yelling. It came quietly, almost accidentally. I was sorting through a messy stack of mail on the kitchen counter, trying to find a water bill, when I picked up an envelope addressed to Claire. It looked like a standard financial notice, and without thinking, I tore it open, assuming it was something I needed to pay. What I saw made my entire body go numb. It wasn't one credit card. It wasn't an overdue bill. It was a bank statement listing 5 different credit cards, each one maxed out. And at the bottom, staring at me like a punch to the chest. Total amount owed, $47,312. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. My hands shook so violently the paper fluttered to the floor. It felt like the world around me dimmed, the fridge's hum, the distant traffic, even the ticking clock, all dulling into a hollow silence. Claire had lied. Not a small lie. Not a panic lie. A life-altering, years-long deception. I sank onto a chair, gripping the edge like I might fall off the earth. My thoughts spiraled. How long had she been hiding this? How much had she used me to cushion her double life? How many meals, bills, favors? How much of our future was built on a foundation of manipulation? When Claire walked in an hour later, humming and tossing her bag onto the couch, I still had the paper in my hand. She froze mid-step. What's that? She asked, voice thin. I held up the statement, barely able to speak. Claire, what is this? She didn't rush over. She didn't try to explain. She didn't cry. She just said, you weren't supposed to see that. Like the issue was the envelope, not the secret that could drown both our lives. That was the exact moment I hit rock bottom. Not when she lied, but when I realized she'd planned to drag me into this without hesitation, without remorse, without warning. And sitting there, staring at her blank expression, I knew. I didn't recognize the woman I thought I was going to marry. I don't know how long I sat there holding that bank statement before my voice finally worked again. My chest felt heavy, like every breath scraped against something sharp. Claire stood by the doorway, frozen in place, eyes darting between me and the paper like she was calculating her next move. "We're done pretending," I said quietly. "Explain this. All of it." She crossed her arms, chin lifting defensively. "You opened my mail," she snapped. "That's illegal. You violated my privacy." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "That's what you're worried about? Not the $47,000 of debt you hid from me." Her lips tightened. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I felt my voice rise, not in anger, just pure exhaustion. "Claire, you lied to my face. You told me you had a clean slate. You let me pay for everything while you were drowning in debt." She scoffed. "I didn't want to scare you off. No man stays when you tell them you're a financial mess. So you trapped me instead?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She moved toward me with sudden desperation, her tone shifting again, soft, manipulative. "I was going to fix it, okay? I just needed time. And you were doing so well supporting us. I didn't want to ruin that." I pulled my arm away when she reached for me, and the way her expression hardened in that instant told me everything. She wasn't sorry. She was cornered. "So your plan was what?" I asked. "Marry me and let your debt become mine." Her silence was the answer I feared. Then she went for the lowest blow. "If you leave me over this, you're abandoning me in my worst moment. Do you understand how cruel that is?" There it was, the final manipulation, turning her lie into my supposed betrayal. My hands shook, but my voice stayed steady. "I'm not abandoning you, Claire. You abandoned us the moment you decided to hide this." The room felt smaller, the air heavier, and for the first time, I realized the truth fully. She wasn't going to stop lying. Not now. Not ever. And that meant something irreversible was coming next. I thought the confrontation would break something open, force honesty, maybe even lead to some kind of real conversation. But instead, Claire shifted gears so fast it made my head spin. The next morning, she woke me up with this overly bright smile, like the night before had never happened. "I already confirmed the wedding deposits," she said casually, pouring coffee. "The venues are locked in. Invitations are at the printer." My heart dropped. "Claire, we haven't even talked." She shrugged. "There's nothing to talk about. We're getting married." It wasn't excitement. It wasn't optimism. It was strategy. When I didn't respond, her smile tightened. "You know those deposits are non-refundable, right? Thousands of dollars. My parents will freak out if you back out now." There it was, the trap. Social pressure, financial pressure, emotional pressure. She was pulling every possible lever. "Claire," I said slowly, "we can't move forward like this." She slammed her mug onto the counter. "Are you seriously doing this when the wedding is already booked? Do you have any idea how humiliating it'll be if you leave me?" Her voice shook, not from sadness, but from fear of losing control. And then she twisted the knife. "If you end this, I'll have nowhere to live. I'll be homeless. You know I can't afford rent on my own. Are you really the kind of man who would put the woman he loves on the street?" I stared at her, really stared. She wasn't asking for help. She was declaring dependency as leverage. I took a breath. "You can stay here until you figure things out. I'm not throwing you out, but we're not getting married." She went pale. "You can't say that. You can't leave. Not now." When I didn't back down, something snapped behind her eyes. She started pacing, muttering, then suddenly turned to me and shouted, "You don't get to ruin my life because you're scared of a little debt." A little debt. $47,000. Lies. Manipulation. Traps. And now she was painting me as the villain. I realized then, she wasn't trying to fix anything. She was trying to anchor herself to me before I could escape. And I felt the moment tightening around me, the pressure building toward the inevitable choice I had been avoiding for too long. By the time evening came, I felt drained in a way I'd never experienced before. Not angry, not emotional, just hollow. Claire followed me around the apartment all day, shifting between begging, yelling, and pretending everything was normal. I could feel myself slipping mentally, like I was being pulled into this warped version of reality she kept trying to create. Finally, I sat her down at the dining table. No distractions, no soft tone, just the truth. "Claire, the engagement is over." She froze, eyes widening like she hadn't expected me to actually say it. "No," she whispered. "No, you're not doing this. You're just overwhelmed. We can fix this." "We can't fix something built on lies," I said. My voice felt steady, even though my chest felt like it was tightening around every word. Her face twisted into something I'd never seen, hurt mixed with fury. "You're abandoning me," she screamed. "After everything I've sacrificed for us." I blinked in disbelief. "What did you sacrifice, Claire?" "Because I've paid for the apartment, the bills, food, your expenses, everything. And you hid debt that could have buried both of us." She slammed her fist on the table. "I told you I'd handle it. And you didn't," I said quietly. "You hid it. You manipulated me. You tried to trap me." That was when she shifted again, tears, trembling hands, voice cracking like she was starring in her own private tragedy. "I can change," she cried. "I'll fix everything. Just stay. Please. I'm begging you." Her hands reached for mine, but I gently pulled away. "You had years to fix things," I said. "You had countless opportunities to tell me the truth. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a lifeline." She let out a guttural sob, collapsing against the chair like I had ripped the ground out from under her. And maybe, in a way, I had. But I couldn't put my life, my future, my financial stability beneath the weight of her lies. Not anymore. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and said softly, "I'll give you time to find another place. But I'm done being responsible for someone who refuses to be responsible for herself." As I walked out of the apartment, her screams echoed behind me. Rage, desperation, denial blending into one haunting sound. And for the first time in months, the air outside felt real, clear, cold, and painfully honest. Leaving that apartment felt like stepping out of a fog I didn't even realize I was living in. The night air was cold enough to sting, but it grounded me, made everything feel sharp and real. I spent the next morning sitting in my car outside work, just breathing, realizing how close I'd come to tying my entire future to someone who saw me as a financial parachute, not a partner. The first thing I did was call the leasing office. "Is there a way to take Claire off the lease?" I asked. The woman on the phone paused, then said gently, "Given the circumstances, we can separate you from joint responsibility. You'll be liable for your portion only." Hearing that felt like a lifeline. I faxed the paperwork within an hour, hands shaking with relief. Next came the wedding vendors. I made call after call, venues, catering, photographer, explaining the engagement had ended. Most were understanding. Some were cold. But almost all of them said the same thing. "Anything booked under your name can be refunded." It felt like I was pulling myself out of quicksand one contract at a time. Meanwhile, Claire's messages piled up. First, "Please just talk to me." Then, "I can't live without you." Then, "You're heartless. You ruined everything." And eventually, "If you leave me, you'll regret it." I read them all, but didn't respond. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because every word felt like another attempt to claw me back into the storm I'd just escaped. My days slowly became calmer. I cooked for myself. I slept through the night again. I stopped tensing every time my phone buzzed. And for the first time in months, I wasn't calculating someone else's expenses in my head. But even as life returned to normal, I knew one thing wasn't over yet. Claire hadn't accepted that I was gone. Not even close. And the way she tried to force herself back into my life proved just how deep her desperation and her manipulation really went. It took a few months for the dust to finally settle, but when it did, the truth hit harder and cleaner than I ever expected. I was sitting in my new apartment one quiet evening, the kind of place where the silence actually felt peaceful instead of tense, when a mutual friend texted me out of the blue. "Bro, have you heard about Claire?" My stomach tightened, not out of fear anymore, but out of lingering curiosity. "No. What happened?" I typed back. A few seconds later, the messages came in a rush. After I moved out, Claire tried to keep the apartment, insisting she could manage it alone. She couldn't. She was evicted within 6 weeks for unpaid rent. Her parents had to take her in, and apparently, they were furious, not because of the engagement ending, but because they learned about her full debt after collection agencies started calling their house. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. Claire wasn't telling people she had debt. She was telling everyone I ruined her life. That I abandoned her when she was financially struggling. That I was ungrateful and cold. That I left her homeless. But here's the thing, no one believed her. Not because of me. Because everyone already knew something was off with her story. Some had even suspected her spending habits for years. When the truth came out, every card, every lie, every manipulation, her narrative collapsed on its own. I didn't have to defend myself. Reality did that for me. A week later, I ran into one of her former co-workers at a grocery store. She told me quietly, "You dodged a bullet." She was spiraling long before you came along. For the first time, hearing something like that didn't make me angry. It made me grateful. I walked out of that store with a strange clarity in my chest. I had almost married into financial chaos that would have swallowed me whole. I had almost tied my life to someone who didn't see me as a partner, just a safety net. And as I unlocked my car, I realized something simple but powerful. Leaving wasn't abandonment. It was survival. And stepping away from her wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of finally living it on my own terms.